Good morning. It is time for our weekly walk around the garden, and today I had planned to show you some plants that I include for winter interest, but we had snow last night, so I'm going to show you things that I plant especially for snow interest. And I think that's actually really important for those of us who live in areas where we have substantial winter, which we certainly do here in Colorado. It's important to think about how your garden is going to look in all types of weather. And I will admit, I don't have a ton of evergreens, for example. That's something that I need to work on. But I do like to plant things that hold the snow well. So I'm going to give you a peek into some of those, the seed heads that I leave, all of those kinds of things that help make the garden beautiful right after a fresh snow and for the days to come while we still have snow. Snow does not stick around here in Colorado at the lower elevations. I'm at about 5,600 feet, I think. It doesn't stick around here all that long. It's not like the Midwest, Minnesota, where I used to live, for example, where you would have snow for months on end. That's really not what we have here. We kind of go between snow and it all melts, and then we get snow again, and kind of there's a cycle there. And that's partly because of the elevation and partly because of the UV exposure. It makes snow evaporate faster, but it's also, our temperatures kind of go up and down instead of staying cold all the time in the winter. So that's just kind of where we are and a factor of our geography. So you'll have to excuse me, my coat is a little noisy this morning and I can't find my mic pack. In the unpacking of my office, my mic has completely disappeared, which is exceedingly unhelpful, but we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, let's get started. So I thought we would stop in the wildlife garden first, and you can see, I'm pretty sure these are rabbit tracks coming through here, but somebody has been out in the snow this morning, so that is pretty fun. So this is Echinacea purpurea, and oh my gosh, I just love these seed heads. They are not picked clean yet either, so that is kind of a store of seeds for birds to eat over the winter, and they catch the snow so beautifully. They look like little pom-poms or something. I think they're so pretty, and I have those sprinkled all throughout the wildlife garden. I cut down a lot of the sunflowers by about this time because their stalks sometimes break under the weight of heavy snow, and you can see, for example, this one looks like he's gonna fall over. So I will come and cut that down, but I think they are so pretty. These have really been picked clean, and the birds were all over them all fall, taking the seeds. And so now they're basically just, you can hear the geese flying over. Now they're basically just seed heads, but they capture the water. They catch the snow. They look really pretty, and I love this golden color. So I do leave them until they start to fall over. And since that one is falling over, now I will come out at some point and cut it down. And then I'll dry the stalk out and use that next spring in the garden because it's nice and sturdy, and I'll just cut it down. Okay, so this is a native wildflower. This is Rocky Mountain penstemon, Penstemon strictus. And again, like so many other native plants here, it just holds that snow so beautifully, and it just looks so pretty. And those seed heads are still full of seeds. They haven't all dropped or been picked away. So this is another store of seeds ready for spring. So here's another. This is a goldenrod. It's a really tall goldenrod, but again, holding that snow so beautifully and just giving a lot of interest. This is another one where I've got some stems that are falling over, so I will cut down the stems that are falling over, but I leave the rest of the foliage. And it's really sturdy and strong. It holds up to winds and it holds up to heavy snow too. We've already had, this is our third snow in the last month, maybe 5 weeks. And so it's doing very well. And I anticipate by the end of the winter, I'll have cut down a lot of it, but not even probably most of it. So in this corner of the wildlife garden, I have a lot of grasses. And this one right here, this is Blonde Ambition, Boutelia gracilius. Blonde Ambition. I love this grass so much. And this one is the side oats grama grass, which I also really love. But you can see the difference. The Blonde Ambition holds the snow and looks so pretty. And this one doesn't hold the snow nearly as much, which isn't a big deal. But when you're talking about appeal in snowy seasons, I think holding the snow on your seed heads is a really beautiful thing to plan for. You can see that that golden color is repeated back behind it. Let's see, right here, we have this gold. That's actually the seed heads of lamb's ear. And lamb's ear isn't, the blossoms aren't like renowned as being beautiful or anything like that. And most people kind of cut them off at the end of the season. But I think they dry this beautiful golden yellow. And I don't have a ton of that in my garden. A lot of it is kind of a deeper gold color. So I leave them because they're that lighter color. So here we have a nice thick stand of yarrow, which I love. There are a couple of varieties in here, but I also love them in the winter because you see we get this kind of cloudy floating effect with the snow, and those stems give this part of the garden height and texture even in the winter, where there aren't a ton of shrubs or things like that, but the yarrow does its job. And that idea is repeated back behind the yarrow. Right here, we have sedum, and I think that's autumn joy. It might be autumn fire, I don't remember, but I think it's autumn joy. But again, we get a nice row back there, the same seed heads. And they will stand up most, if not all of the winter. When I do finally cut them down, I'll leave about 6 inches because those are nice hollow stems. And they may be places where nesting bees will lay their eggs in the spring and summer. So they're pretty cool. But I love the texture that this yarrow gives even in the winter. It's not flat here. It is full of kind of mounds of vegetation, which I really appreciate. So I wanted to point this out. This is hardy plumbago, and it is not a native plant, but it has this beautiful red color all the way through the winter, and it is just such a lovely plant. So I recommend that too. It also has these really pretty seed heads on it, which hold the snow, and it naturalizes very nicely without being aggressive in the garden. So I'm a big fan of hardy plumbago. So one of the things you'll probably notice as we're walking around is I really don't have a lot of evergreens anywhere. And that is something that I plan to address in the coming year, because evergreens are great. They provide shelter, they provide year-round color, they provide structure, and I have to admit, I don't love a lot of evergreens that thrive here in Colorado. There are a lot of evergreen plants that are beautiful in other parts of the world, but they need more moisture than we get here in Colorado. So I need to dig in and kind of find some species that I like that also will do well here, where it is so dry and we have these weather extremes. So that is a goal for next year for sure for my garden. So here we are in the cutting garden, and you can see I left a lot of things with seed heads over here, but they are starting to break and fall over. So this is Tithonia, which was gorgeous all summer and into the fall, but we had a heavy snow a couple of weeks ago, and I need to just come and cut those things down. I just haven't done that yet. But the birds picked those seed heads clean, so I'm really glad I left them for a good long while. The same is true here. This is Monarda. It's still holding up, but I have a couple of others that have broken in the snow. Once things break, then that's when I will come and cut them down. But I usually chop and drop because there might still be seeds on those seed heads, and mostly I'm just cutting them so that I can get through paths and that kind of thing. I'm not cutting them for even aesthetic reasons, just so that I can walk through there. But like I said, I will chop and drop so that if there are seeds left, they are still available to any creatures that need them. You can see we didn't have a ton of snow. It was maybe half an inch, but it's enough to make things look fresh and clean for a little while anyway. The pond has frozen over and has been frozen for a little bit. I don't heat the pond in the winter. I know some people do, but I don't have fish or anything living in there, so it just freezes. But you can see more sedum here with those pretty seed heads. It looks awfully pretty in the morning sunlight. This is a red twig dogwood, and I just love those red stems. The trick with red twig dogwood is to cut it back every year by a third, all the way to the ground, because it's the new growth that is brightest red. And if you don't do that, it will start to kind of lose its red gorgeousness. So it means that your dogwood is never going to be huge, but I'm okay with that. I actually really prefer this size. So every year in the spring, I cut down 1/3 of the stems, and those actually make really good cuttings, and you can use them to propagate and make more red twig dogwoods. But I have this one here, and then there's kind of a bank of them right here also. And with good pruning, they are fantastic. They are thirsty plants, I will say. They're not as drought tolerant as I wish they were, but that's just the way it is. Gosh, they are so pretty in the winter though. And of course they grow like on the edges of ponds and streams and that kind of thing. So that's why they're thirsty plants. That's where they belong. You can see the cattail, the catkin of the cattail. It's all fluffy and cool. We only got one catkin this year. I'm not sure why that is, but and here's another sunflower left. So pretty. I also have this yellow twig dogwood that's planted here. Same thing is true. Cut it back by a third each year. but this one is not quite as vibrant. The red for me really pops, but I think that's because I have a lot of grasses, and so the yellow isn't as vibrant as the red is because it's not as much of a contrast, but it's really a beautiful plant too. I know the sun is really glary right now, but the pirate ship always looks at its best in the snow. So this is actually the warmest part of my yard. It has reflected heat from this brick wall, but we also have southwestern kind of exposure, and so it is kind of its own little microclimate. And you can see the raspberry bush over here has not died back yet. It is still kind of doing its thing, and I just let it go until it's ready to give it up, and then I'll cut it back in the spring. But this is what it looks like when you plant out pretty much only herbaceous perennials. So this is why I need some better winter interest over here. I do see this out my office window and out the guest room window. And of course, I want every part of my yard to be beautiful. So I need to get some evergreens and some things that have a little more winter interest in here next year for sure. So that's a quick cold tour of my garden this morning. I hope this gives you some ideas about what to plant so that you have not only winter interest, but snow interest in your own garden as well. If you have questions or comments, drop them below and I will be sure to respond. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy gardening.